And some white hot Bobby Moores. Look, there's been bloodshed. Yes, snapped up on opening night by a very wise art buyer. So many great things about Bobby Moore. This looks to me to be a surfer.
I love his use of text.
There is something on the back of the painting. Maybe
Yeah.
let's have a look what it says on the back. It's a bit of a reference to it.
May 73, R. Moore 19. Made in response to a photo by John Witzig. There you go. So not just working in the elements, but working from media. And yeah, Big Bad Bobby Moore has done some really good, fisherman signs, and those signs where mullet and flake, 75 cents a kilo. It's fantastic.
You can see a lot of influence of Colin McCann. Do you know Colin McCann, the New Zealand painter who did all the signs?
That's what I was thinking of. I was thinking it wasn't Rosalind Gascoigne, it was Colin McCann.
Yeah.
But it's just, even Ian Smith would paint billboards and get into highway signs. But Bob would do it like, tackle shop notices and bait, and had a whole series of fisherman pictures as well, like Doggett Street, but the surfing life and the rogue Australian, that's what, Bob's a wild musician as well, so I think he was on tour with Crowded House for that world tour, and he just took incredible notes the whole time, incredible paintings and drawings in his notebooks, and one day we might see those. Talk about your big old tour brick there.
Oh, me?
Yeah, maybe stand in front of
Because
it.
Claire's got the camera, she's not going to talk about hers.
Maybe,
Talbrick's really, it's so synonymous with Highgate Hill in the area that I live, and I've been living around here for like 20 years, or 20 years, and it's always there. And a few years ago, I painted this exhibition where I painted every house in my street, but Talbrick was always sort of looming above, and I thought I must do that one day. And then when sort of Clare invited me to sort of join this exhibition, it gave me the opportunity to sort of just look further afield than the street where I live. And of course, Talbrick was the first thing that I sort of ventured towards. So this is just down Gladstone Road a bit, and I just kind of like the juxtaposition of this sort of white Queenslander against this sort of looming wall of sort of 1960s architecture. I mean, because it's an interesting building, and it's sort of I think it's a sort of a famous architectural icon anyway. So,
is that because it was the first high-rise in the area?
I think it was the first high-rise
accommodation.
Yeah, there was a multi-purpose, a multi-purpose building built in Queensland, probably. I don't think it was the first high-rise, because there would have been high-rises.
Oh, yes,
No, residential high-rise.
Something like that. The interesting thing about Talbrick now is right behind it is the Highgate has been built, which is this massive black building. And the temptation is to paint that black building with Talbrick, which I might do one day, but sort of for this show I was kind of going more for the nostalgia of sort of the 60s kind of look, all the blues and sort of oranges and stuff, and it's kind of, and I really like the fact that it used to just be by itself on the top of the hill.
Yeah, for so long, and you can see it from over Corrow Drive
and everywhere. When I do my walks around the place, you can see it like from the brick house, you can see it from the purple house, it's everywhere. So it's and sort of looking at it too, it sort of works so well from so many different angles. So so I think I probably will paint it again at some stage or another, because it'd be good to paint it with the black building now too, like sort of this ultra modern piece of something.
Slate.
Well, it's just so unusual that somebody built a black building like in Queensland.
But they're doing it more and more. They're painting everything charcoal grey. Julia Bell says, stay down over the border and stop painting our buildings grey.
Big black skyscraper, but it's right behind it, so you couldn't see it anyway. This is sort of at the end of Emily Street. So it was a good view of it. I didn't have to worry about the other sort of things around it.
The great thing about that tower, I remember going to a party here, and you can only get like 8 people or 10 people in the lift at a time. So everyone to go to the top, and it's got a fantastic 360 viewing deck of Brisbane, and you actually are able to see how green inner city Brisbane is, because not that many people had cemented their front lawns at that city. So, but you all got a different coloured star, and you go up in separate groups to go up in the lift.
Yeah, but I'm not sure whether it's open again, the top part. I mean, because you used to be able to hire it out for weddings and things like that too, but I'm not sure whether they might do it. I don't know. But it's a very it was a very complicated thing to paint.
I bet.
When you're sort of used to painting kind of single level places, and then trying to paint something.
I lived opposite in Highviews, which was just 6 flats, like Art Deco, and I did a charcoal drawing about that big of Torbreck, and just doing it in charcoal drove me batty. Because it's like knitting a sweater. You're counting down 2 below, 3 across, 2 below.
Because everything sort of lines up, and when you're not an architectural drafts person, it doesn't really make sense.
No, it doesn't.
You make all these mistakes. You constantly make mistakes. This window's got to be over this way, this is going to be over there.
Once I painted a giant saucer chair, those woven saucer chairs for the Churchyard Award, and the painting was about this big, and it was like knitting a sweater because it had to weave in and out of the things, and I got 3/4 of the way up and realised I wouldn't fit the entire circle in, so I had to knit purl drop 2 and leave a line of 8 out and just hope that it all came into the circle. And I went to sleep and I was dreaming of weaving oyster shells.
Oh.
So that's totally nuts, isn't it?
Would you draw that all up first?
I did draw it up first.
Everything, almost?
I pretty much put everything into its spot, into its position.
What pencil do you use? Because don't some darker Bs give out too much graphite when you're painting?
Well, I have learnt this new technique because I really enjoy painting on board, because it's sort of I like the hard surface.
Resistance.
But what I do now is I paint 3 coats of the primer sealer undercoat over the board and sand it, and so it becomes really super smooth. And then I can draw on that, and then I've discovered this clear gesso. And so then over the drawing I just paint 2 layers of clear gesso and then sand all that off. And so the drawing's actually embedded into the surface.
So it's like an egg tempera.
So you can just sort of work over the top of it.
That's great.
So it's sort of it was a bit of a revelation actually, because I've never ever drawn with pencil on canvas or board, because I hate the fact that it bleeds into the paint. It really annoys me. And so I always used to just draw with a brush and raw sienna, because raw sienna would just disappear whenever I was painting, particularly with the flower paintings. Because they were so big and you could just draw with the brush, and it was really...
And raw sienna is that Renaissance ground, almost like but it's a bit dirtier than Naples yellow.
Browny, sort of light browny colour. And I just used to make a slurry with turpentine, really, and just, so you can just draw.
You mean they start from a slurry? I can't believe what I'm hearing.
But with the buildings, I mean, I can't draw with a brush. I have to draw with a pencil, because it's sort of you sort of... If the building goes crooked up the page, which I cannot draw a straight line, so I have to actually sort of measure things and sort of...
I can tell you can't draw a straight line. It's kind of like drama.
I always veer to the left for some reason, when you're painting a line.
On an angle.
And there's nothing more annoying. People really criticise you when you're painting architecture and it's crooked.
It's true. I've done an arch, I've done arches like these arches, and I've had architects come in and go, now, not so much. I'm not that really.
But do you find too many hard lines are could ruin a painting if it was too defined, the edges.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to reach a point where you stop, actually, because, I mean, there's a lot of detail that's not in this, like, because it's just impossible. Like, you know, to drive you nuts. Like, I could never be a photorealist because it's just sort of...
But it wouldn't necessarily make a better painting.
No, right. Because, I mean, all these brands have got, like, they've got all the railings and things on them, and then there's doorways behind things, and then, but
it's too much.
There's a lovely line of green in that I really like. A lovely line of green, which is very Brisbane too.
Deirdre calls them my storybook trees, because I don't paint trees like trees, I paint trees that look like they come out of kids' books.
Well, so did Henry Rousseau. Rousseau did that. So, that's not a bad thing.
No.
And it's just like trying to change sort of, I mean, they sort of vaguely resemble the trees that are there, so, but it's as good as I can get, right?
It's as good as I can get. The other thing is, Gustave Courbet, the great French landscape painter, used to say, take all the information and then simplify. So what you're saying is that things need to be left out. People would look at this and go, wow, there's so much information in it. But you've completely simplified this little space so the eye can rest and it can get back into the intensity and the depth. But can we zoom in on this bit? Because, holy moly, the man knows what he's doing. Can't paint a straight line, unquote. I can't paint a straight line. Help. No, I don't see it, Stephen. I don't see it. It's beautiful.
It is.
And look how many straight lines. I mean, the Bricklayers Federation of Queensland certainly would be buying this.
That's just working with a little tiny brush. And as soon as you get one line in there, you can sort of follow along from the other line. Because none of that's drawn. Like all that is
that's painted.
There's no drawing behind any of that. So
it's like the dog in the Arnolfini Marriage by Van Eyck that was apparently painted with a 2-hair brush because you need 2 hairs for the paint to move through. There's no such thing as a 1-hair brush unless you're destitute.
I use 000 sometimes.
Oh, geez, 000.
Not very often. I mean, you have to when you're doing things like little lines like
I'll go down to a 1 at a hard-pressed horsehair. A filbert 1. That's me. At the best.
I wouldn't go near it.
You wouldn't go near it? I know. Can we just, Claire, you're doing the filming, so let me, speaking of the girl that won't go near a tiny little brush, here you are.
Yeah, so this has a lot of, if you look, there's a lot of pencil as well, and some lines. So a lot of gesture and mark making.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The whole composition works so nicely together.
I find a square really difficult.
Well, the Viennese said because they can fit a perfect circle inside a square, people like Gustav Klimt said it was the best composition because it was pure harmony.
And there's somebody said to me recently, it's good to paint in a square because people can't complain that it's the wrong shape for their house. If it's a rectangle that way, it could be wrong, and if it's a rectangle that way, it can be wrong. But if it's a square, you can't complain.
That's right. It's not just a Buddhist house.
It started as a plein air. I mean, it came from plein air paintings from gouaches, but it's painted in the studio from memory and gouaches.
It still has that openness of the Western Plains, though, that you kind of like. They've got the valleys and the flat plains.
Yeah, and I see a lot of blue out there when you go out there, all the mountain ranges.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever painted tabletop? No. Actually, funnily enough, that painting behind you, this is the other side of that range. Oh, there you go. Look, I've got something to do with this one. It's called Silver Pinch Road, but this is just after the floods, and in 2015 it all kind of came to, 15 came alive with all the rainfall around there, and of course it got a massive dousing in 2011. But this is round the range from where Claire's painting at the other side of Toowoomba. Yeah, and it's just one of those rambling properties that fall down to Lowood, but these blue hills, they are really wild and dark blue, and then you can just pick out, the odd palm tree planted in 1932, and things like that. But I love a rustic fence, and they're on their way out, just like you, Stephen. We want to get a bit nostalgic. Leave out the black building, just paint that.
I like that about your painting for old trees. And imagining, old gardens, it's kind of, there's a bit of a history in there.
I think that I just pick old gardens, and I just, being born in Maryborough, you felt like you were being raised in the 1950s, although it was the 70s, and so, and also nostalgia has a powerful effect in painting, doesn't it? Because we're the recorders of our time, and yet we want to fondly recall our childhoods. It's all about the innocence of things that are going missing. But you want to be the draftsman of your time, and these things are vanishing. So the black building behind Torbreck totally changes its aspect.
You really captured a feeling of nostalgia in this.
In Maryborough? Yeah, I painted this mill for 30 years, and this is where I hoon around on my bike through the cane fields. And just after some floods, this little dam came up, and when my mum grew up in the Maryborough Wide Bay region, we've had 2 generations back to the last century, and she used to go swimming in a little dam that's no longer there, and just the sugar mill and the way that it keeps chugging on. This area is called the Pocket, which is always like a little bit seedy and shady. But it was a fantastic place for freedom. And the Maryborough River just bends right around there, so the river just loops. And just the geography of places, I guess, and where the sun rises and sets has a huge effect on what we pick as pictures, I think.
And would you paint, would that be one on the night?
Yeah,
would you paint that in one sitting, really?
Well, maybe 3 sittings. I'd go out for about six hours at a time, and I just bash into it. People say, you have to wait for oil to dry. I say, who's boss? Let's push it around. So things like this, where you can get like that old rusty thing down in one mark. I love that Chinese landscape painting idea that the Buddhist monks would go out into and they'd meditate on the mountain, and then they'd try and sum up the way that mountain looked in one mark after looking at it for 8 hours. So the mark that we make describes that place, so the cane tops, these farm buildings, But same thing happened in Tamborine up here. So this was done in one setting, plein air. 2 settings, probably about 5 hours each. But this is where all the what are they called? The people who go off in the...
Oh, yes, I know that spot.
Whatever that sport is where they sail off the side of the mountain. Paragliders. That's where the paragliders take off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not O'Reilly's, Benabarro's there.
Yeah. So it's quite, an iconic place for Brisbane because of the scenic ring. Yeah. Come on in, have a look at the moons and the moors. So here we are. These were painted in the dark on the beach, so you don't really know what you've got.
Really? You were in the dark?
I was in the dark with a torch, and I had my palette beside me, and I knew where my ultramarine blue and my Payne's grey and my raw umber were.
Yeah.
So so I basically paint in half light, and there's these gorgeous rings around the moon. And and then you bring them into the light and you go, oh wow, that's actually quite
I wouldn't be
wild.
Seeing. You should be like Van Gogh with one of those hats with all the candles around them.
Oh wow, did he?
He had candles around.
Candles around the top of the hat. Gee whiz, imagine an Aussie version with all the the candles and two why is it burning my face? It's not like a court hat. But when I knew I was exhibiting with Big Bad Bobby Moore, sorry, Bob, you're not bad. You're tremendous. And this painting has always reminded me of Bob's work because of its simplicity. But it's in Mother McGregor Island, up near Davida Allen's studio at Silsey Beach. These are beauties.
Tell us about this, Stephen.
That's my Lost Galah painting. That's a bit of a... I was almost going to call it Self-Portrait on Highgate Hill, but... No, I just... walking down to West End, this Paul Galar had been lost, and the owner had put up a poster on the walking pole, to walk across the crossing. And I walked past it every day for about 2 weeks, and I thought, oh well, I've got to paint it. But the dilemma was, I didn't really want to identify the owner of the bird and put her telephone number and all that sort of stuff on the painting, because of identity and stuff like that. So I ended up turning it into being to be about me. I changed the name of the bird and I put Alex's phone number.
That's right. Alex.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah. So if you want to call Alex,
because I thought if anybody wants to buy a Lost Galar painting, they can ring.
That's right. Why not put the gallery number on the Lost Galar?
It's all about self-promotion.
It really is. And do you want to zoom in and find the Lost Galar?
Yeah.
Because that's Stevie's little secret.
He must be very much loved if he's microchipped.
Yeah, I know. And don't you love the way that Stephen's painted sellotape? That's got me by the girlies right about there. I mean, the quietness of the tone and the way that this piece of paper flips towards you is great. And I didn't believe you couldn't paint a straight line until I saw the angle on that pole.
Well, it was when I sort of drew it up, I thought, I might make this pole crooked. And I sort of thought, after I painted sort of the background in, I just thought, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But
no, it works beautifully.
But I sort of thought, I'm not going to do it again.
No.
But I had to put a little bit of optimism in, because everybody came into the studio and said, that's a really sad painting, but he is found. He is found.
You really have to see him because he's got a really lovely big belly as well, well loved.
Did you insert the rose?
Yes, in the original poster, the bird, I couldn't really tell what it was because it was such a bad copy, like photocopy, and the galah was holding something in its foot. It was some sort of toy.
Whiskey bottle?
No, it was a plastic shape, and I thought, I don't know what this is, so I don't think I should actually venture trying to sort of replicate something that I can't even see. And I just sort of brought in the rose thing because I used to be the rose painter.
I know.
And because I sort of decided to make it about me, I just put in a flower in it.
I remember Stephen getting massive accolades for his fantastic paintings of roses, and then what I most respect you for, my friend, COVID-ing, is that immediately after you sold all those great rose paintings, you said, "No, stuff this. I'm doing a whole exhibition on self-portraits. Like it or lump it."
Self-portraits have always been sort of part of my sort of way of working, because it was such a relief to paint something really silly after sort of concentrating on all those petals for sort of the hours and hours and hours and hours that they sort of took. So it was just nice to do something that didn't have to actually resemble anything.
Except you.
That's the joy of self-portraits, because it doesn't really even have to resemble you.
That's true. But you did a cracking one at the last show with all the tin New York
all those
hydrant pictures.
Yeah.
That was a great self-portrait that sold, didn't it?
I think I did sell.
Yeah,
it did.
The one in pieces.
Have you done self-portraits all your life?
I'm going to have a show here one year with all of them.
All of them? They're all going to line up.
Because they're all in my garage. There's I've probably got about 20 of them now.
Yeah, my first one's hella mouldy.
Yeah, God knows what mine look like, because they've been in the garage. Some of them have been out there for like 20 years. So, or they're probably the first one I've got was I painted it when I was in Metro Art, so that would have been in 1987.
Wow.
Yeah,
so is there a picture of Dorian Gray in there? That's what we want to see.
Well, some of them I do look very, very young.
It'd be quite neat to have a show of artists' self-portraits.
Yeah, well, I'm just...
Could people stand the beady looking? Because that's hours
that's
and hours
the problem.
of
Would
beady
anybody
looking.
want to come and look at that? That's the problem. Like, it's a really good sort of idea, but I don't know whether anybody would want to do it.
The weird thing is, people think, nudes and portraits, like that's an impressive show of skill, but can you live with it? Because even if you give someone a portrait that you've done of them, then they kind of go, I can't live with it, I've got to give it to my parents or something.
Yeah.
know, is that just me?
No.
My house is full of portraits.
I mean, Franz Howell's really new to have a ship of portrait around, but if you've ever got stuck in the Louvre for 5 hours in that whole section.
Well, they're almost impossible to do portraits as well because people just change so much when you're painting them, and I just find that everyone is a failure. But it's kind of, it's just sort of you think, that was
so aim low, lose low. The only way is up. Everyone's a failure.
Well, I spent all of last week doing one of Deirdre, and I just thought, and in the end, I really enjoy it while I'm doing it, but then I just think, it could have been so much better. But it's sort of
but I think that's the feeling you get after the creative process. Look at it in a year's time and marvel at your brilliance.
No, that's the thing. Yeah, when you look at something that you haven't seen for quite a long time, you can actually see it.
Separate. I did a portrait of a young boy once in the Panizza family, and he was such an intense teenage character that I overworked his eye to the point where if you were coming around the side of the painting, it stuck out like a crab ball. And there's 4 other siblings in the painting, including a black Labrador, and I was just like, man, I need to just slew that eye off with the middle part of the brush, slew the eye off, made him proper again, and it was just that teenage intensity, the glower. But one night I worked really hard on it. I thought, I really got that kid. I really got him. When I came into the studio the next morning, he looked like Tom Risley after 5 days fishing trip. It's like
I know, it's so hard because while you're doing it, you're thinking, I'm nailing this.
I am nailing it. I'm so on point.
And then the next day you think,
was it a bit like the Cold Chisel revival concert? Yeah, I'm so nailing it.
I love that portrait you did that was hanging here.
Oh, my portrait, the green desire girl.
I wonder who bought it.
Somebody with a desire for a desire girl. It was based on Matisse's Green Line. It was about that whole thing of getting a feeling. That's probably why you like it, because you go into the studio and respond to the feeling in things. And so she was. I was teaching at St. Peter's, and she was the model. So that was only like about a 20-minute picture.
Yes.
But in 20 years of teaching life drawing, that one worked really well. So into the frames it goes. Yeah.
I wonder. I wish Bobby was here and he could tell us more about his
rock wool.
And his materials, because I know he uses a lot of pigment mixed with binder, doesn't he?
And also he's also enjoyed using the house paint. I know the whole Alice in Wonderland series by Blackman was done on this Melbourne masonite that's virtually indestructible after the nuclear war.
He used to pull it up off his floorboard.
Pull it off the
floor, and it was under his lino.
Blackman's family, they deserve more of his pictures, to be honest. But he really loves to get into what paint can do, whether it's house paint or gouache or letting the surface float is one of Bobby's wonderful skills, really. And people say if you paint a baby, you don't want the baby to look corny and twee. He does the same thing with the bird life, like with these rosellas. Like these are Australian birds in the bush, like a black cockatoo or a rosella, and they're just they're so much a part of the environment, but they're just seen. It's so beautiful. They're seen 3 times in yours, those birds. There's no mistaking. Those two are related, the one with the rose and the puffy guts.
I think they're supposed to be the same.
They're supposed to be the same bird. They look like their brother and sister. Once been to the hairdresser. I love this element of drawing. So, are we wrapping it up?
Yeah.
3 soldiers?
Wrap up.
So, getting away from it all. Peace out.